Greetings, everyone. My name is Blessing Kumbu. I am a final year BSc student at the University of Cape Town, majoring in human anatomy and physiology and biochemistry. Welcome to our second episode of Beyond the BSc Horizon. So today's episode is going to be interesting because we're going to be talking about all things exercise science postgrad. So we're very excited to have three special guests with us today. So today we are joined by Dr. Sharif Hendricks, who is a senior lecturer in the Division of Exercise Science and Sports Medicine in the Department of Human Biology here at UCT. And we have two PhD candidates, Natalie and Ashley, who are doing their PhD in exercise science. How are you guys today?
Good on your side?
Good. How are you guys feeling?
Yeah, also good. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for accepting the invite. So, as an icebreaker, before we get into the specifics, if you can just tell us what is your favorite hobby and why?
Yeah, you can go for it.
Thanks, Reef. So my favorite hobby is surfing. I picked up surfing because I live in Durban and feels like a natural progression from beach to surfing. And I think one of the reasons I enjoy it so much is it's quite a awesome way to be in nature and quite a freeing sport. It's like no pressure. There's no like performance side to it unless you do it professionally. Or unless you're super competitive. So yeah, I just enjoy that aspect of it. And it's pretty cool to ride on a plank on top of water.
Cool. And then Natalie?
My favorite hobby is cycling. So I started cycling the end of 2021. And yeah, I think it's just similar to Ash's opportunity just to be outdoors, move our body. Yeah, and I just love just being outside in nature. And it's also just an opportunity to unwind. So I think it's great for mental health too.
Definitely for science students, definitely need to unwind. And Dr. Sharif?
I'm not going to give you a simple answer, but it does depend on the day and the weather, number one. But if I had to pencil it down, it'd probably be spending time in or around the ocean. So I do a bit of free diving, snorkeling, or just spending time at the beach. I do find, though, more recently, I don't have time to do many hobbies, but I enjoy most days just spending time with my son, Mahir, who's 4 at the moment. So literally just going to the park and wandering around the park, essentially.
Okay, cool. I have wonderful hobbies, eh? Okay, then maybe if I can focus on the postgrad students. So if you can think back, and it's a long time, back in matric, what kind of a student were you? And then also, how did that have an influence to you choosing to do science in your undergrad?
Okay, I'll go first. So funny enough, I actually wasn't a sporty person in high school. I didn't actually play sports, anything. But it was probably in grade 11, I started literally from nothing, but then I started actually learning to run. I used to run with my dad quite a bit, and then my sister, who is a few years older than me, she got me into like exercise, and we would start like working out together. And I think that was like the start of my passion for like health and fitness and just being healthy and moving your body. And that was definitely what sparked my interest in exercise science. And then on the other side of that, I was I was quite academic, so I was very like interested and good at math and science. So doing a BSc, an undergraduate in BSc, was something that interested me for my undergrad.
Okay, cool. Ashley?
Yeah, so I am probably on the other side of the spectrum. I have a huge passion for sport, for all sports. I participated in anything that I could at school, which was a little bit demanding. But I think that combined with just a love for like how the human body works and how we can train in certain ways to optimize performance and how we can do certain things to make ourselves better. I think that kind of side of things has always attracted me to sports science. But funny enough, in matric, I was convinced I was going to do chiropractics or physio. And then with a little bit more thought, I was quite a competitive hockey player and still am. And kind of like factoring that into the decision, decided that it was probably better to do the sports science route and just focus on my hockey a little bit, try and give it the best chance that I could to do as well as I could. Always with the intention of transitioning into physio or chiro, and then just ended up enjoying it and loving it so much that here I am, good few years later, still doing it. But I think that initial spark was just I'm like quite an ambitious person, and I'm like really interested in how we can be better. Like I feel like I'm a person that like is constantly striving to do better and make improvements, and it feels like exercise science is a great place to express that.
It's actually pretty cool because I'll be speaking to a lot of people, and it's like in high school, people didn't have an idea like why did I choose to do a BSc? They just went on to do a BSc, and then when you're doing a BSc, like maybe exercise isn't bad after all. So it's very nice to get to see like you're really passionate about it like from high school, and that is what drove you towards like getting into exercise science. So if I can take it back to you, Natalie. So then how would you say was the transition from matric into undergrad? And like in undergrad, like what were like some of the culture shock or challenges that you faced, and like how long did it take for you to adjust to like being an adult, I guess, in undergrad and the jump from matric?
Yeah, so I would say it was quite a big jump. Not just the transition from matric to undergrad, but also moving cities and essentially out of home for the first time. And I found that quite hard because I moved to Cape Town and also to UCT, but none of my friends actually moved to, a lot of them went to other universities or overseas. So I essentially came knowing no one. So I remember being quite homesick in the beginning. But so that was a big thing, like not knowing many people. And also like a new city, living on your own for the first time, like managing finances that you don't have.
Exactly.
But I think because there were like a lot of people in the same boat, many people coming to undergrad, like many people coming from a different city, moving out of home for the first time, everyone's in the same boat. So you do make friends quickly because you can all relate to one another. So I did make friends fairly soon, which helped a lot. And yeah, I think once I found like my community in undergrad, that really helped. And then being able to, I guess, lean on each other.
Okay. Is it similar for you also, Ashley?
Again, kind of opposite end of the spectrum. I like first day of university. I remember my parents dropping me off, and like as I was walking away, I was like, "Okay, cool, cheers, guys! Like, thank you so much. I'll see you soon." And my mom's there, like bawling her eyes out, and then I was like, "Oh no." So that's probably like when it first hit me, and yeah, I would say I adjusted pretty well. I've always been quite an independent person. And always been quite like confident in what I'm doing, with exceptions sometimes, obviously. So yeah, I don't ever recall feeling extremely homesick. I think there were times where, like end of the month, money's running out. I was like, oh, like I do miss home now. No, and I'm joking. There were definitely moments, especially when things get hard or like you run into troubles that you have never really had to deal with alone. I think that's when I missed home the most. A pretty big support system for me was the hockey team. I think it's something I've kind of learned going through varsity, is that it's nice to have a group that you identify with that enjoy the same things as you, and sport is a great way to be able to do that. And it's a great outlet. It's great for your mental health. And it's such a good way to make friends. So I think a lot of my close friendships have been formed through that, and they've been like very long lasting and strong friendships as well.
Like as science students, we get so caught up like in getting the grades, and then people never really have time to like have a balance and have like some extracurricular activities to participate in. So I do think like in university, also for my side, that's how I made friends, like through extracurricular activities. So if I can take it back to you, then is that is it another jump again, like from undergrad to postgrad? Is it another transition again, or is it that now because you've adjusted to undergrad, it will be like a smooth ride in postgrad, or do you need again to adjust like in postgrad?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was quite a big jump, I think, but that is because I moved provinces again. I like finished my undergrad in Pretoria, and the year I finished was COVID. And then after COVID, I moved here to Cape Town. So it was a whole like reshuffle. And I had like 2 or 3 friends down here from school. But other than that, like I literally knew nobody. And like that in a way was a chance to like almost like redo what I'd done in undergrad. So again, it was that like learning curve of like trying to make friends again, and like which sports teams do I go and like be a part of, which people do I make friends with. So I would say that was probably a bigger jump, and the lifestyle in Cape Town is quite different to what it is in Pretoria, and it's also quite different to Durban. So I think adjusting to that was probably more difficult. I actually found like fitting everything in here is quite difficult just because there is so much to do, which is like really exciting. But yeah, I would say that was the biggest adjustment, was like I would kind of frame it as like, how do I prioritize my studies and also make friends, look after myself, go do active things. Yeah, so I think that's that kind of balance of things is where I struggled the most, but getting there.
Okay. And how did you find it, Natalie?
I actually found it like quite a smooth transition. I knew a lot of people in honors from undergrad. There were a few of us who came across. I already knew some people, which was great. And I also knew I had very good friends in the biokinetics course. So we essentially, the exercise science and honors, exercise science honors and biokinetics honors do a lot of are quite close together for the honors year. So in that sense, like I already knew people there. And for exercise science honors, there's only 8 people. So in your class, well, in our year, I think there was only 8. And you get to know each other so well, and you essentially do life together for that whole year because like you're leaning on each other for support. But I think because I'd really set up my life in Cape Town for those first initial years in terms of friends, I'm very active in like my local church, so I have a strong community there. And yeah, my life, I wasn't like Ash, I didn't have to move provinces again. So it was just, just starting a new degree, being able to meet new people. So I found it quite exciting and not necessarily daunting. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I was reading an article about you, Dr. Hendricks, and it was written rugby player, researcher, and I quote, from the rugby fields to places of learning. I think myself and the viewers would kind of want to expand on that.
From the rugby field to the learning. So I probably have a bit of both in terms of my history. If I have to kind of go back to matric, if you had to ask me what I was doing, what I'm going to do in matric, I would have said a pilot. And it's probably my interest in like being systematic and looking at numbers and figures that probably kind of got me onto that. Obviously didn't do the pilot route, but I went into a BSc in sports and exercise science. And through that time I was also a competitive rugby player. I played for UCT at one stage, or for most of my senior career. And then I think after my undergrad, or during my undergrad, I enjoyed the science bit more as opposed to the sport bit. And then moving from undergrad to honors, I applied for the BSc physiology component honors. So not the exercise science postgraduate, actually the physiology honors program. But then from honors to masters, I went into exercise science, and master's PhD stayed exercise science. But throughout that period, I played rugby essentially, competitive rugby. Yeah.
So how was the balance between like being a rugby player and also studies?
I mean, it's kind of coming full circle now, thinking about it. I think in most parts of life there is no balance. When there's time to work hard in terms of your studies and your research, or whatever you're doing, and then there's time from a kind of sporting point of view, or even just kind of leisure activities that you kind of spend more time doing that. So some days or some weekends you might want to spend 2 hours out at the beach as opposed to 1 hour for argument's sake. But at the same time, there's probably going to be a weekend where you have to do more work than other weekends. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
So it wasn't a matter of balance. It's just doing what needs to be done.
Okay. Okay. So I think to all of you, I think for most people, they want to know like what is exercise science, because I don't think for myself, like before like final year, because like in the first semester we did strictly exercise, physiology and science. I never knew like you could pursue that as a career field. Like it's like, oh, exercise and oh, okay. So like what is exercise science for someone like maybe wants to go via that route? What is it?
So I want to say there is the very clear cut description if you wanted to like Google what is exercise science, but I don't think it's also something that can be limited, and I think there are a lot of different avenues that you can go into. So our degree in exercise science is very research based, but you are exposed to the practical elements as well. And I think from there you can choose essentially what you want to go into, and there are a lot of opportunities presented to you. So let me give some examples. So we obviously do a research project, like a thesis, and when we are given those options, there are like many categories, from like rugby to cycling to running, strength training, genetics, sleep. Thank you. There are like loads of options, and within those options, like some of them you'll end up working with teams, and also being exposed to like governing bodies. And for example, my honors project, which was quite different, I looked at how we can use social media and animation to promote science communication and publications on social media. And from that, I actually got a job as a social media editor for 2 science journals. And so like there's like loads. You can stay in academia and just conduct research, or you can be a sports scientist for a team, or you can do science communication and medical writing. I think there's lots of avenues you can go into. So I don't think it's like something that can be described in like one sentence. But I think ultimately it's things that are related to the human physiology and performance. So different avenues related to that.
Yeah. Any more comments from you, Ashley?
I don't think so. I think Nat's pretty much covered it. I think one thing that's cool about, and like even just comparing it to like the different sort of like things that I've been exposed to as like an athlete, and on the other side of things, one thing that's really cool about the UCT exercise science program is it equips you with the capability and ability to learn and do things a certain way that are of an exceptionally high standard. And you see that with the UCT students that move into like different spheres. Like no matter which sphere they move into, they end up doing really well, just because they have been brought through this process of being able to produce things of very high quality. So I think that's like one outstanding factor that I've noticed with the exercise science unit.
Okay.
Can I add?
Yes.
Because the kind of the theme we're talking about is beyond the BSc. Correct. And so a couple of things as we speak about kind of the point of moving from matric to the BSc to the postgraduate, and postgraduate specifically in exercise science. As all of us probably experienced in grade 11 in matric, there's a big focus on kind of choosing a professional degree. You need to become a lawyer, you need to become a doctor, you need to become a physiotherapist or a chiropractor. But I would argue that it's actually probably better to choose a BSc for a couple of reasons. Number one is the BSc is open, so you're doing physiology and biochemistry.
Chemistry, yes.
So there's a bit more openness to what you can do at the end of it. Obviously, the risk is that after the 3-year degree, you might not walk straight into a professional job, but in terms of undergrad, what you're studying is open. It gives you exposure to what's at the university. So you can, obviously, once you're in the university, you can change and add and subtract, etc. Then, so that's the one component of choosing a BSc, and it's kind of your starting point to become a scientist. And so what Ash and Nat's also talking about, and again, I'm obviously biased here because I'm promoting the exercise science degree, is the thing about the exercise science degree honors compared to arguably the other degrees is that it gives you range. So we're doing stuff from science communication to specific like genetics to specific scientific specializations. But at the same time, we're working with teams, with players at the kind of interchange with our stakeholders, with the public. And so I would argue that's the kind of component about exercise science. It gives you range.
So maybe following up on that then, how do you then, because I feel like a lot of people that do a BSc, one of the most common worries is like, okay, will I get a job after doing the degree? So then like as a student, how do you then know whether, is it necessary to go all the way to PhD, or do you need to go all the way to honors or masters? And like also like, what are like your job opportunities looking like at this stage, honors, masters, or should you go all the way to a PhD?
So basically, and I think I've mentioned this in class. I would, again, probably bias here, would always encourage and argue that you must do a honors, masters. At least you're in the kind of pipeline now as a BSc, as a scientist. I mean, I don't know what the accurate stats are for South Africa, but at one point I heard less than 2% of South Africans get the opportunity to study. And you can imagine even less than that gets the opportunity to go beyond the undergrad and specifically in the sciences. So we can actually, as a group now, what are your options after the BSc? You can find a job, but you're probably not going to find a job specific to a BSc degree. So you could become, for argument's sake, a science teacher, which is a good one. You could become a science writer. You can write for newspapers and popular magazines in terms of science, or you can something in a science sphere, but not scientists, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So that's the one option, and then the second option is obviously study further within the sciences, i.e., do an honors in any of the health sciences. Option 3 is probably do some form of postgraduate diploma or work to add on to your science degree, which can kind of also navigate you into maybe something more specific. I know some students at UCT will do the BSc and then they go on to the postgraduate management courses. So then they, for argument's sake, work in sport, but go on to some more kind of management role within sports, or marketing role within sports, if that makes sense. What other options are there, I would say, after a BSc degree? You could kind of, I know some students change into a more professional degree that maybe go into medicine or physiotherapy after that. But I'd still come back onto, I'd still say you kind of have the background now to pursue a career as a scientist, which at the moment, I mean, South Africa needs more scientists. So if you by the means and you've been accepted, to be honest, even if you get accepted and you're not by the means, still take on, because there are funding opportunities as well once you're in the programs.
Okay. So maybe then to follow up on that, then what would you say, like for exercise science specifically, what does it take to become like a successful researcher in this specific field?
I'll go head over to Ash and Nat to answer some of those questions.
Jeez. I that's quite a tough one. I think it depends how you define success, to be quite honest. Like, is success earning enough money to, live the life that you want to live? Is it gaining recognition within the field? Because I think there's a lot of areas to make a really big impact, especially in South Africa, where sports and exercise, I think, we're slowly starting to see like how important it is, not just for sports people, but for the general population. So there's a lot of areas where sports scientists and exercise scientists are needed. And there've been some incredible people that have come out, and researchers that have come out of the exercise science unit that have done really, really well and have made a profound difference in the way that we do things. And they've gone on to be part of like governing bodies, or have been involved in the International Olympic Committee, for example. So, I mean, that's one way of defining success, is like how far is your reach as a sports scientist or exercise scientist. And I think a large part of that comes with like the opportunities that Sharif mentioned. It's taking them with both hands and going, yes, I'm going to do this, and pursuing it and doing it well. From the more academic point of view, probably like doing research and making sure it gets published and making sure it's of a good standard to get published. Yeah,
I think something I guess you could do specifically in during your honors or masters and PhD is, I want to be like a yes person in a sense. So firstly, you're gonna get exposed to a lot of research projects, and if people ask for help in other projects, like help out,
say yes.
Just say yes, because firstly, you're gonna learn so many skills. Secondly, even if you think you don't like that project, you may actually learn to love it. And I do believe you can learn to love any project that you do because you become invested in it. And secondly, like get involved in the department where you can. That also helps you. Just in our department, like some of our professors are like really top scientists. So getting involved, like then you build your connections with different professors, and connections are really important. And then, applying for conferences, applying for funding. And also I believe in science communication. So publish the research that you're doing on like Twitter and LinkedIn and get your research out there. And you'll also be offered like opportunities. Like this year, for example, Sharif offered me an opportunity to work with SACA, the South African Cricket Association, on another project. And that's like, once again, I said yes. And we worked on this research project, and I got connected with other people. As well as the other example I mentioned earlier, from my honors project, I was put in touch with, because Sharif is the social media manager for the European Journal of Sports Science, and my honors project, I was involved with them, and then that was linked. Then I was put in touch with the media editor for that journal, and that got me my job in for the other journals. So it's just like being a yes person, getting involved, like putting yourself out there a bit, and not just like focusing on just your one thesis that you have to do and doing it well, because that one thesis actually means nothing if no one's going to read it or no one knows like who you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so again, just to add on what Ash and Nat was saying, it's kind of the stuff basically kind of, again, undergrad, you're kind of just learning the content. I would argue, again, going to the postgraduate level now, you're exposed to all these skills that you kind of need in the working world, irrespective of whether it's science or industry, or any field, to be honest. And it's kind of what Ash and Nat was saying, this open mind, open heart. So not to go out in the world and be like, no, that's for me, this is for me. No, it's go out, explore, try things. Things might not work out. but at the same time, kind of just keep a open mind and open heart about things.
Okay. So, maybe to all like the final years out there, like myself, aspiring postgraduate students, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to someone like in final year going into postgrad next year in terms of like deciding on what to do next year, and also like because I've been hearing a lot of people saying I should enjoy my December holidays because it's hell next year. So what advice what's one piece of advice you would give to us in terms of like choosing a pathway to follow, and also like trusting that okay, that would lead me to where I want to go,
Yeah.
and not stressing too much about it.
Yeah, I'm listening so far to the third years, maybe this year. This year, obviously, the applications are closed, I think. So you've obviously applied. Some of the students might have had some outcomes already. My suggestion, and I still kind of stress this to my students. Next year is going to be hard in a sense of it's because honors is always hard because it's a tricky one because they kind of try to do a lot within a year. It's kind of you've done undergrad and then you kind of get ramped up to become a scientist within a year, and it's a lot within that year that you need to learn. My kind of advice always is kind of just stick to the basics, which is simple and it sounds obvious, but it's reading and writing and kind of just keeping those things simple. Stick to the simple stuff, reading and writing, and sharpening your tools in that sense, and that will kind of carry you through the year essentially.
Okay.
I think don't stress too much about what is going to come following postgrad. A lot of opportunities will be presented to you throughout your postgraduate year or years that you didn't even know were an option. So, for example, if you're doing exercise science, don't stress that like, oh flip, I'm not going to be, or like worry that, oh no, maybe I won't become an exercise scientist or a coach, because there's so much more out there. So don't have a narrow mind on what you want to become at the end of it, and don't worry about that yet. Just focus on the year ahead.
Okay. Ashley, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it kind of adds to and speaks to both of their both Sharif and Nat's points. I just remember going through honors, and there were moments where we were like, geez, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And I think it always came back to trust the process, trust the people around you, that they have got you, and your lecturers and professors do actually want what's best for you, and they want you to walk out of there being a well-rounded student who's like ready to take on the world. And yeah, they really do just want what's best for you. So trust that, and it should be all good.
Adding, kind of coming back to that blessing as well, and it's kind of going from matric to undergrad to now postgraduate as well. It's to be comfortable with uncertainty. So even if you're going into a postgraduate honors degree, for argument's sake, and you're studying, in my case, I did physiology. I wasn't sure, I didn't know I was going to do exercise science after physiology. And likewise, if you're doing exercise science, it doesn't mean you can't do something else after that. And like Ash was saying, just kind of stick to the process, do what's in front of you and do that well, and kind of things will unfold in that sense.
Yeah, because I think the misconception that most of us had was that if I do honors in exercise science, I'm stuck with that for the rest of my life. I can't change anymore.
Exactly. Yeah,
so that's what got us panicking. Like, oh, if I don't get into neuroscience, then I'm going to do exercise science. So
exactly. And at the same time, I find, listen, this is what some of the undergrads think, to do exercise science, you must be a sporty person, or you must have some sport. But that's actually
I wanted to ask that because, but then if you look at it, all the people I've seen from the Sports Science Institute, everyone is an athlete, or everyone is like into exercise.
I think people often choose it because they are passionate about exercise, but I think there's so many. You don't have to be a sporty person to have a desire to, and to have like to be passionate about knowing how the human body works and be able to, you don't have to be able to run 10 kilometers if you want to research someone running 10 kilometers.
Yeah.
And also like the skills that you learn throughout exercise honors, like just data analysis and writing and writing well. And there's so many skills, but you don't have to be a sporty person per se to use those skills, and those skills can open up like so many job opportunities. Like think about how many jobs require you to analyze data or to write well or organization or to manage a project, which is pretty much what a PhD is.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it is just project management, data analysis, just with maybe a context of sport. But there's nothing sometimes actually sport specific that you need to know or have to do in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was also the worry, because after the first semester, everyone was interested like in exercise science, but then people were like, wait, I don't like exercise and I don't do sports, so do I really belong there? Yeah.
Don't worry, it's not one of those degrees where they make you run like a beep test to see if
Yeah.
you're fit enough to stay in the degree.
And I think I had to do that for sleep.
Did you really?
Yeah, they made me do the sleep. I was like, okay, but
Okay.
for
Do you have anything else you want to add? Maybe one piece of advice, maybe something that I didn't touch on.
Don't think so. Just enjoy it. Whatever direction you go, life is there to enjoy. So don't forget to enjoy it.
Oh, I have a bonus question. What's the plan after PhD? Sorry.
I'll tell you after PhD.
Yeah. Going to postdoc.
So I don't think I'm going to do postdoc. I really enjoy science communication. So I'd love to go into something within that field. But yeah, for the time being, it's just focusing on doing the PhD. But I do a little bit of science communication work on the side.
So just actually to give you a sense of listening, kind of also where exercise science and the work we do fits is because we kind of at the end of applied work, or we do a lot of our work's applied. We always need to kind of think about ways to better communicate our science. So we do a lot of work in science communication, science engagement, community engagement, and stakeholder engagement. We work a lot with outside stakeholders to make sure that our work's actually applied in the real world. So that's actually also like an advantage of exercise science or doing work with us. Piece of advice, I'd say I'm going to be a bit controversial here or antithesis and say be the least ambitious person there is. But what that points to kind of take it in context, it means focus on the process, focus on what you're doing now, and do that well. And then that moves you to the next step, and then that moves you to the next step, and next thing you know, you kind of reached your dreams.
Yeah. Trust the process. To lead you there.
That's the process.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to share information about exercise science. I'm sure a lot of people will learn a lot about exercise. I have learned a lot. I thought it was all about athletes and exercising, but actually there's a lot more to that. And I do hope that as undergrad science students, we get to realize how like diverse and broad a science degree is, and like there's actually a lot to do.
Yeah.
I just do hope like in matric, during like science career days, they don't focus on like being a doctor, being a lawyer. They do introduce this kind of stuff just so to
And what frustrates me sometimes with how they expose learners to science in high schools is it's mostly like science literacy stuff. Do you know what I mean? This is science, then they show you physics and chemistry kind of related. Where at the end of the day, bottom line, science is asking a question and trying to find out the answer, essentially collecting data and evidence to answer that question. And in the case of exercise science, it's just in the setting of sport or exercise, but that's science in a nutshell. And I think if more learners, high school learners, primary school learners, know that, science would be a career path for them to pursue.
Thank you. That is all from today's episode. Thank you. Bye.